Greetings and welcome to the Cerebral Women Art Talks podcast. I'm Phyllis Hollis, your host. As an extension of my Instagram page, Cerebral Women, this podcast offers insights into the visual art world. I interview artists, mainly artists of color and female artists who will freely articulate what inspires their creativity. In addition, you'll hear interesting perspectives from dedicated art professionals who work with artists and the art institutions that feature them. I'm confident that collectively, these individuals will indeed stimulate your mind as they do our eyes. Please know these interviews are conducted in my Manhattan apartment, so please forgive the background sounds of city life. Welcome to the Cerebral Women Art Talks podcast. This episode features Dora Jeridi, a French artist whose work is characterized by a dynamic, expressive approach to painting, blending intense emotions with a powerful physicality. Her practice often explores the tensions between figuration and chaos, using vivid color contrasts, bold brushstrokes, and a mix of mediums such as oil, charcoal, and sometimes ballpoint pen or spray paint. Originally trained as a political historian, she arrived at painting as a refuge from the world of discourse, concerned with the difference between word and image. She began her training with a Spanish painter who spoke in a translated French. From him, she learned to harness the shadows and suggestive power of earthy browns in the classical lineage of Velázquez, Titian, and El Greco. For her recent show at Periton in New York City, she began with the tonalities of color rather than of form, and the resulting palette, buoyant, pop, and rendered in a symphony of spray paint, charcoal, ballpoint, oil stick, and acrylic, now but tonally brighten and balance the broken limbs that populate her pictures and mark her departure from the shades she learned from the old masters. Enjoy this episode featuring Dora Jeridi. Dora, welcome to my Cerebral Women Art Talks podcast.
Hi, Phyllis. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Let's start with, when did you discover your interest in becoming a painter?
Quite late, actually, when I was 25. After nearly 10 years of studying political history, I went through a whole academic path in Paris. You have a specific competitive exam in France that's called agrégation, and that allows you to become a teacher. And that's really selective and hard and also prestigious. So I was preparing that competitive exam and I failed. So that was the moment when I asked myself, oh, but is it really what I want to do? And I realized it was not. I was really interested in history, but I couldn't see myself actually do that for the rest of my life. And I always had the intuition that I would end up doing something artistic because I felt that I had certain sensitivity and I didn't know what to do with it. But this failure really opened the door to me daring doing that. So I started painting and drawing only at that moment when I was 25.
So, how do you define your practice?
I don't think I would define it actually. I feel like you don't necessarily need to define things to do them. Sometimes the words or the language are not necessarily the most appropriate thing to encompass something. You know, there's one of my favorite movies that's called The Red Shoes. And there is one quote in this movie that really stuck with me when the ballet master comes to the ballerina and he asks her, so why do you dance? And she answers, oh, but why do you live? That's the same question. And so for me, and I think that's really a fundamental answer. And I feel exactly the same when I speak about painting. I feel like you could replace the word paint or painting by life or living. And so when you ask, how would you define life? This is such a broad question, such a deep and complex question that you don't need to define life to live, to be living. So I don't answer that question. I don't answer that question.
What is the role of drawing in your work?
I would say that I draw with painting directly. I don't draw sketches like preparatory studies or stuff like that because I know that there will be such a discrepancy between my sketch and also the tool that I use to draw, if it's a pencil or a pen or something like that, and the canvas, because there's the scale of the canvas. My paintings are usually really, really big, and there's the matter of the painting itself, which is so different than what you have when you draw on a little piece of paper, that I'd rather go straight ahead onto the canvas and do mistakes, have accidents, because I think that accidents really make the richness of a painting, and you can have really, really beautiful findings, results with accidents. And so you have to make these accidents happen. My painting teacher, he used to say, you have the accidents that you deserve. You have to create the conditions to have good accidents. And so if I prepare it too much, I'm keeping myself from having accidents. And so the painting will be less alive, less lively, less vibrant. I draw directly, either with the brushstroke or with sometimes it's much more graphic with charcoal or with the pen. I use sometimes a ballpoint pen directly on the canvas. So there's drawing, also because I'm very influenced by the idea of graffiti, and I mix it with the oil painting. So there's a dimension of a graphic drawing, but I like to mix it directly. I don't feel comfortable with using the drawing as something preparatory.
Are you influenced by other artists?
Yeah, so many, so many. The list would be endless. I don't even know where to start. The classic painter, Velázquez, Titian, the Greco have been really important, but then also in more modern era, Beckmann, Picasso, Basquiat, or even nowadays Nicole Eisenman. Really young painters too. There's a French young painter called Paul Taburet. I really love his work. Pam Evelyn, that's really big abstract expressionism. Georges Rouy, Cecily Brown has been really, really huge. I'm a huge fan of her. And Rita Ackerman, Philippe Gaston. I'm saying everything not in order. It's impossible to choose, so many influences. And I love to look at all that, and Cy Twombly also, like for the graffiti aspect. But I love to mix everything up together, let it float in the mind, and grab a piece of or a fragment at some point and mix it up with everything else.
So, when do you know a work is finished?
That's the most difficult thing, really, to finish a painting. But I would say it's when there is nothing you can add on, and there's nothing you can take off. And you have the sensation that you've reached a certain balance. You have circulations, you have contrast, you have movement, you have a dynamic, you have vibrancy, the right expression. Everything becomes organic. You can feel when you start a painting, it's always so difficult because the body parts of the paintings are all scattered everywhere, and it's not making a living body. There's a moment when you feel that the painting is lifting itself, like there's a breath, in French I would say un souffle, that makes it work and being alive, and now it's autonomous, now it's becoming a real painting. And that's really difficult to get to that. Sometimes it can come quite quick, sometimes it can take months. So you never really know how long it's going to take to finish it. And also I use a lot of improvisation in my work, so it's not as if I had a clear schedule of what I have to do. But yeah, that's a question of balance.
And do you listen to music while you're working?
Yes, a lot, a lot. Because there's a question of energy. And I feel like the paintings are like visual music. So there's something circulating between the music vibration or energy that it gives me, and the energy that is on the canvas. The filter of that is the body. It comes through the body, and sometimes you have to be in a state of trance so that you have the right energy to put it on the canvas. And at other moments, when you're going more into details or softer parts or more precise part that require more attention or more focus. You're going to change the music because you need something more contemplative or deep or something like that. So I listen to music when I paint, but it's more than that. It's that music and painting work the same way for me. You have layers with a melody and rhythm and something to accompany the melody, but that will be more discrete or like recurring heavy note or something like that. So it's the whole composition that you can compare to music.
When do the titles enter the creative process?
I would say it's coming up in the middle of the painting, and I'm starting to see how it's gonna go. This moment where when I was saying that the painting has this lift, it's not necessarily over. You still have a lot of things to adjust, but you have the breath. The breath of the painting is here, and so you chew the title in your head for some time, because I'm not always necessarily sure that it's going to be the final title. Sometimes I can change, but so I'm chewing it for several days or several weeks like that, and yeah, at one point it appears obvious. It's a bit mysterious, I must say.
And what's the process of choosing color?
That's a challenge. I think I moved a lot. I changed a lot concerning colors. When I started to paint, I really used to study the classic masters, and they use a lot of brownish colors, especially to start their paintings, because it's a color that's very deep, but at the same time, you can have a lot of contrast with the browns. So you can already have a lot of mystery, suggestivity, depth with the browns, and then you add up the lights, the brightness, and you can build your contrast like that. So that's how they work. So at first I used to be very in the brown because I thought, well, I think the browns are so beautiful, and with not a lot of color you already have something substantial, something that work. But at one point I started to be stuck in the browns, and I had difficulty to go into the color, and the colors can be frightening, especially when you start painting. So there's been a moment of transition that has been a bit awkward, where I would try very bold addings of colors with the fluo pinks and really hard acid yellows on top of the browns. And it would be really difficult for the eye, like very punk, very radical. And I had to learn how to soften the things, to be more and more confident in the color. And I think with my last show in January and February 2025 at the Puritan Gallery, I reached a new way of coming to the color that might be quite interesting, because until then, I was really focused on what I would represent in my work, because my work makes figuration and abstraction, but there's always figuration. So there are always faces with expressions and rather intense expressions. My work is really expressionist in that sense. So I was really focused on that, and I think the color was coming second. But the emotional load that I had to put in this figurative expressionist part was so heavy that I felt that it would be maybe difficult for me to go on like that in a sustainable way, because it was too demanding for me, like physically and emotionally. And so I had to find a way to take a step back, to have more distance with the emotional load in my work. And the solution was through color. For this show especially, I started to paint only color. So the painting were abstract at first, and it gave me the distance with the painting. And I really considered color as if I was nearly a decorator, like just, oh, what matches well together. And it allowed me to pay more attention to the colors, and at the same time being more detached. And then I would add up the figurative parts. Well, I'm a bit caricaturing here, because of course after that I'm going back and forth with the abstraction and figuration, but that's how the painting started. And so when the figuration would come, there was already this warm and welcoming environment given by the colors I had chosen, because my paintings are always in very warm colors. Even if the things that are represented can be hard, the color is balancing with a warm and welcoming sentiment.
What materials do you use in your work?
I mix a lot of things, a lot of different things. At first, I was really focused on oil painting, but more and more I started to mix it with charcoal, spray paint, ballpoint paint, as I was saying earlier. But sometime I tried to experiment things. There's one canvas I used hay in the painting, and it worked. I was inspired by the work of the German painter Anselm Kiefer, who used to put very large amounts of straw in his painting. And I went to see one of his exhibitions in Paris, and I was like, oh yeah, I should try that. And I didn't try with straw, but with hay. Yeah, I like to mix things together because each of these medium give you a different physical sensation. There's novelty and depth and brightness and softness in the oil painting, but the charcoal is going to give you something very graphic, more raw, and also a different speed. It's quicker. The same thing for the pen, and the spray paint is going to give you something more obliterating, like censorship on top of what you did. At the same time, it's very vaporous. So you have this mix of different textures that give a complex physicality to the work. It's not just painting is not just an image. It's matter. And matter vibrates physically. And so this adds depth and complexity and physical pleasure to the body of the viewer. That's what I think.
Do you think about your audience while you're working?
Not really, because I am the audience when I'm working. You switch constantly between being the hand that paints, and you take a step back and you're the viewer. So you switch from that to that. But my relationship to the paintings are really intimate. I feel like if you are concerned, but like, who is the viewer? I don't know. Should I think about an average viewer? Should I think about everybody? I mean, that's impossible, because I think the trap would be to start thinking about what would people like. And that's the beginning of the end if you do that. You have to be convinced in what you do. And I find it cumbersome to have this pressure of, oh, are people gonna like it? Or what are they gonna think? I don't know. This is out of my control. But the real adventure is my adventure in this journey with the medium, with the forms and the shapes that are coming up, and trying to find a balance. I'm the only judge at that moment when I'm alone in the studio, and I just have to trust myself, which is really hard. You're always full of doubt, but I don't need to add the pressure of what would the viewers think.
Tell us, what are you excited about right now?
It's a perpetual development. And so I want to take a step back from my last show because there are some stuff where I have frustrations. And so I want to go deeper into that. I'm really excited in having more time this year to go deeper and to develop more complex paintings, or even, just to hone the craft. I mean, maybe that sounds a boring answer when you ask me what's the most exciting thing, but I think just honing the craft that's exciting for me.
What do you enjoy most about being an artist?
I think I would say freedom. Freedom. That's really a luxury and a privilege to be able to do what you want, to create a link, a communication, to share it with people. It's always a surprise for me when the people are receptive to the work. It's really amazing because the idea that me being free can create those relationships, I cannot even believe it. You have to create your own rules, your own expectations, and it gives me a lot of satisfaction to know that there's only me relying on me. It's also very challenging because you are invaded by self doubt. And so you really have to drag yourself from the swamps of self doubt to overcome that and to grow by yourself. Sometimes I start having an athlete discipline, like a top athlete discipline, to allow me to be focused and to keep on progressing. But you're the only person to do that. A top athlete, he has a team, he has a coach, he has a physio, he has a. But when you're an artist, you're alone. You have to be everyone for yourself. You have to be your coach. You have to be your. But I love that. I think it's such a privilege to be that free.
I've really enjoyed this conversation, and this is our last question. How do you want your art to impact the way people think?
I don't want anything. I wouldn't phrase it in terms of will. Phyllis, I don't even know what I'm doing, if I'm really honest. It's a mix of intuition, sensation. Yes, there's a will, but it's so transformed in the process that the will disappears and the painting takes over and you have to dance with it, to accept that. The way people are going to receive it is totally out of my control, and I love that. That's life. Things transform themselves, and that's the purpose, and that's the purpose of art, to create something that make people feel alive. Maybe that would be the goal. If people feel alive when they see my work, I think I've accomplished something.
Well, I appreciate the work you're doing. Your work was just captivating, and like I said, I'm really happy to be able to have seen it in person here in New York. And thank you for your time. It's been a great conversation.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Cerebral Women Art Talks podcast. For additional content, please visit cerebralwomen.com and be sure to follow Cerebral Women on Instagram.